10 reasons why people fail on Upwork. Number 1, lack of consistency. People think that Upwork is as simple as setting up your profile, applying for a few jobs, and all of a sudden you're gonna make money for the rest of your life. And that's the furthest from the truth. In actuality, you need to be consistent on a day-to-day basis when you're applying for jobs, updating your profile, connecting with clients, working on your skill, and that has to be done every single day. As more and more people are joining Upwork, the platform is becoming more competitive, and clients are also expecting people or the freelancers that they hire to have a high degree of professionalism. And the only way to do that is to continuously tweak your profile, work on yourself, apply for jobs. Because again, think about it from this perspective. If there are more people on the platform, whenever a job is posted, more people are applying, that means the standard for the applicant goes higher as well. So you have to be consistent on a regular basis. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was the case where you could just simply throw on a profile, apply for a few jobs, and all of a sudden you start making money because it wasn't as popular. But in 2023 and onwards, that's not going to be the case. So one of the biggest reasons I noticed is that people fail because they're inconsistent. The second reason is that people have not mastered a skill. And the reason why that is that there are profiles on Upwork where if you present yourself as a generalist, you'll get work. And it has worked for a lot of people. They could be someone who's just simply a digital marketing expert who knows many fields, or who's an engineer and knows many fields. Or for example, they're an accountant and they know many fields as well. That's okay, and it can work for some people. But for the majority of scenarios that I've seen on Upwork, you must master a specific niche and skill. So simply saying that you're a digital marketing expert doesn't cut it anymore. Because when people are looking for a specific issue, they're looking for a specific person. If I have a specific need with regards to accounting, where I'm looking for someone who deals with specifically B2B clients in a specific area of international tax, would I look for someone who has a simple general accounting degree and does accounting as a whole, or someone who specializes in that? And what happens with that is that when you are someone who's the generalist, you'll get a lot of work for sure. But at the same time, you can't charge the same amount of rates that you can charge when someone who's an expert and they can charge the most as well. So what ends up happening is that you get a lot of work, you get a lot of clients, but what ends up happening is that because you're not a master of that, it almost turns into another job. And for a lot of people, they burn out like that. So from that perspective, the second reason that I noticed is that when people don't become a master on something, they get lost in the crowd, number one, because there's so many more people coming into the platform. And number two, what ends up happening is that Upwork becomes just like any other job. Because they can't charge a higher amount in terms of their hourly rate, because they're a generalist, now what they have to do to compensate for that is they need multiple clients dealing with multiple individuals, multiple time zones. So you're working all day, and what ends up happening, you burn out. Reason number 3 why people fail on Upwork is because they don't understand client management. Client management means that when you do all the hard work, when you apply for the job, you do the interview, and you finally land the job, but there's more to it than just that, because now you're dealing with the client on a day-to-day basis. That client could have certain expectations from you as well. And again, just like when you start any other job that you have, obviously the first few weeks or even the first few months, it's sort of a feeling out zone, right? Because you're feeling out what the client's expectations are, what their preferences are. They're also getting adjusted to your working style, your working habits. So it's sort of an adjustment period on both sides. But what ends up happening when there's a confrontation, or something doesn't go as planned, or for example, the client had different expectations, or maybe the job expectations changed because the client realizes that what they had hired you for, well, in actuality, they need you for something else, and you have to go out of your comfort zone. In that scenario, not being able to manage the client from that perspective and being able to address the client's needs as they may change or may not change on a day-to-day basis, and learning how to adjust your personality and working style with the clients becomes a huge barrier. And I've seen this time and time again, where people get these amazing jobs, they get these amazing contracts, but after 2 months or a month, it doesn't work out. The client leaves you a bad review, you leave the client a bad review, but guess what? At the end of all that, it's a wasted opportunity. And when that happens over and over again, and you're not able to manage the client successfully, that again leads to burnout as well. Because being successful on Upwork, more so than just simply getting quick, fast jobs, it's about long-term clients, because long-term clients equals long-term revenue. And if you're burning and churning through clients every single day because you're landing with great clients, but then all of a sudden something happens, then they leave you a bad review, guess what? Your profile goes down as well. In terms of the JSS score that you have, you get a bad review as well. It looks bad on your profile as well. And thousands of other things come from that as well. So in order to mitigate all those issues, you need to be really strong in client management. In a lot of cases, I see that most people on the platform don't understand, and when I say understand, truly understand what client management means. And that becomes the third reason why I notice that people fail on Upwork. The fourth reason why I notice people failing on Upwork is too many jobs. And I know it almost seems counterintuitive because people are fighting for jobs on Upwork and they would love to have the opportunity of having, multiple jobs at their disposal. But this is what happens on the opposite end of the spectrum, where you take on more than you can manage. And I've had this experience with myself. I remember a few months back, I hired a video editor and he was the best video editor. He was amazing, did the work right, did exactly what I asked him for. The problem? He barely produced anything. And you know why? He was juggling 10 different clients, 10 different time zones. So whenever he would get around to my project and finish even 10% of it, it turned out amazing. But before I even know it, he disappeared again for another 2-3 weeks. And what ended up happening was that I kept giving him more opportunities and more opportunities, but eventually it came to a point in time where I was like, the amount of time that I'm spending and wasting and chasing after the individual, it just doesn't make sense anymore. And then obviously I terminated the contract and that led to other issues as well. And I've seen this in multiple examples where you get a lot of work. So what ends up happening is that either a freelancer on Upwork, they try to manage everything themselves and they crash and burn because again, they can't handle that workload and they're going above their capacity. Or the second issue that comes up is that you get a bunch of clients and then you start outsourcing the work. But because you're not managing and overlooking the work, what ends up happening is that when the work goes back to the client, it's obviously not up to the standard that they want it to be because you didn't look at it and you didn't look it over. And what ends up happening is that clients end up ending the contract, leads to bad reviews. And again, for that individual, they're unsuccessful on Upwork. The fifth reason why I noticed that freelancers fail on Upwork is because they don't treat Upwork like a business. Upwork is not simply just a freelancing platform, but in actuality, it's like running a business. You have expenses that you have to be mindful of, from taxes to software expenses, marketing expenses. Maybe you're outsourcing the work, so you have to be mindful of the budget that's over there as well. You have to manage the client expectations to the client's budget, then take into consideration the amount of hours and time that you spend in terms of the actual work being done as well, or if you're overlooking people as well. And then there's other expenses that come with it too. And then at the same time, also you're bidding for work too. So there's multiple components, just like any other business. You're dealing with the client, you're dealing with your own needs as well, you're dealing with other freelancers as well if you're hiring other people and outsourcing work. So if you don't treat it like a business and work on it on a day-to-day basis in terms of maybe making sure the accounting is on point or making sure that your budget that you have for the job is on point as well. You could land the most amazing contract, but if the amount of hours you're putting into a project versus what you're getting out, the numbers don't align, guess what? You're in a situation where you're losing money in that scenario because the amount of time and effort being put on that project versus what you're getting out of it doesn't make sense. And for a lot of people I noticed that are on Upwork, they simply look at this as a freelancing platform, and that's that. But in actuality, you have to treat it like a business to be successful, which for a lot of freelancers I've noticed so far is not the case. The sixth reason why I noticed that people fail on Upwork is that they don't know how to write proposals. Most individuals that I've interacted with think that writing proposals on Upwork is as simple as just simply saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, I would love to take this opportunity, and I would love to schedule this call with you so that we can start the project. Guess what? If it was that simple, everybody would be getting jobs on Upwork. And keeping in mind the fact that now there's so much more people on there, do you honestly think writing a description just like that, and there's 50 other people that applied for the same job, that the client is gonna go through all the proposals and say, this is the one for me? Probably not. So in that scenario, you really have to develop your proposal in a way where it stands out, it's eye-catching, and it's able to catch the person's attention when they're going through all the proposals. But in most scenarios, what I've noticed is that most people either copy-paste templates, they barely put any thought into the template either, or what they're doing is they simply have a template that they already have in place, they simply change a few words, and they submit it without taking into consideration the client's pain point, the client's budget, what they're actually asking for in the proposal as well. A lot of times, for example, clients are so weary of the fact that freelancers don't read their proposal or their job application. What they'll do is they'll say, make sure you start the application with blue or yes or some other word just to make sure you read it. And for a lot of freelancers, they simply put those standard templates in and they don't even read the proposal and see the fact that they missed something as important as the client saying that if you don't do this, I'm not even going to read your proposal. And guess what ends up happening? You don't read the proposal, you don't get the job. So that's the sixth reason why I noticed that people fail on Upwork. The seventh reason of why people fail on Upwork is that they don't properly fill out their profile. And this is a concern that I've noticed in the majority of freelancers who are on Upwork. Sure, they slap on something very quickly, they put a little picture on there, 2-3 lines about themselves, and think all of a sudden I'm going to get a job. And like I told you before, maybe that was the case 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but that's not the case anymore. Now it's becoming very competitive. So every single field that's available to you must be filled out. And when I say must be filled out, I don't simply mean 2 lines filled out. I'm talking about thoughtful responses, making sure all the information is over there, factually checking the information, spell checking the information, and presenting it in a clear and concise concise manner that when the client looks at your profile, they're able to digest the information immediately and pick up exactly what they want to see. And when I say that, that means everything from your profile to your certifications to, for example, putting in your job history, putting in your education history, everything over there. But the majority of freelancers, when you go on and look at their profile, you'll notice that they've simply either missed certain parts altogether, or what they've done is they've simply put 2-3 lines in every single section, and you can tell immediately that this person is not really serious or has no idea what they're doing. And both those messaging are conveying the wrong thing to the client when looking at your profile. The 8th reason why I notice that people fail on Upwork is that they don't maintain a level of professionalism. And when I say that, I'm saying that the level of professionalism not being applied to multiple aspects of their Upwork business. So that could be from their profile. They don't have a professional picture of themselves. They have a picture of, maybe they're in a blank tee, or maybe they're at the beach and they take a quick selfie, and they think that that's going to be my profile picture or my Upwork profile. That's not the case. Or it could be lack of professionalism when it comes to dealing with the client. They're thinking that the client needs them to be available from these hours to these hours. They're not going to make themselves available, or the client needs a certain work done by a certain deadline and they don't follow through on that. So it could be any aspect of it, but just lacking the level of professionalism because you're thinking it's a freelancing gig is one of the biggest reasons why people fail on Upwork. You have to actually treat this like your job. So you may be doing Zoom calls where you have to dress a certain way. You may have to make sure you fill out your profile and present yourself in a certain way. When you present your work, you have to make sure it's spell checked correctly, it's properly done, making sure it meets the requirements and guidelines of the client as well. So in all aspects, if you're not a professional, that's going to hinder your progress on Upwork. And that is the 8th reason why I noticed that people fail on Upwork. The 9th reason why I notice that people fail on Upwork is they are not continuously improving themselves. And this is a huge mistake I notice all the time. People think that, okay, I got these Google certifications or these Facebook certifications or my engineering degree or whatever it may be though, in whatever industry you may be in though, they think that's enough. That's not the case at all. Whatever industry you're in, that industry is innovating every single day. New software is coming out, new ways of doing things are coming out, new programs are coming out, new, for example, projects are coming out. If you're not on top of that, what's going to happen is you're going to get quickly left behind. And as I mentioned to you before as well, in your field that you're an expert in on Upwork, there are thousands and thousands of other profiles that are the exact same as well, offering the exact same things for the exact same prices. So if you're not up to date, you're not doing the latest exams, you're not up to date with the latest changes in your industry, when a client is looking for someone, they're going to pick up on that immediately because the client will see someone and when they compare the profiles, they'll see profile number 1, who has all the credentials from 5 years ago, but has not done anything relevant in the industry, versus someone saying that I know the latest software, the latest updates, I know the latest things that are necessary for my industry. So not maintaining yourself, and when I say that, not improving yourself in terms of your profile, in terms of your skill, is the 9th biggest reason why I notice people fail on Upwork, because they may be successful for a short period of time, and it may just be that they may get a lot of contracts, but what ends up happening is that they eventually, those contracts end, and then their source of revenue dries out because they're not able to keep up with the herd. So you have to make sure you're continuously innovating and improving yourself to maintain that consistency of clients. The 10th and final reason why I notice that people are not successful on Upwork is they pick the wrong skill for freelancing purposes. And what do I mean by that? In order to be successful on Upwork, you want to pick a skill that you can master, number 1, that you can also provide as a skill as on a freelancing platform, number 2. And number 3, you can charge a reasonable rate that you can keep increasing as you become more of an expert. And obviously, as you keep charging your rates, you have to work less hours, but you can make the same, if not more as well. But what ends up happening is that a lot of times I notice that when people come on the platform, they're picking skills that doesn't make any sense. Like I've had instances where I've talked to certain people and I asked them what their skill is, and they're saying it's data entry. So what? Data entry is not going to do anything for you. Yeah, sure, you might get 10 jobs or 5 jobs, simply entering data. But in the long term, what is the scope of that? And how are you going to innovate yourself in the data entry field? Like, it doesn't make sense. Or for example, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of cases of people simply signing up on Upwork and say, I'm a VA. But it's like, okay, so what? There are so many VAs out there. It's so hard to scale yourself and then start charging the right amount of money, because again, a VA is simply a generalist who's not a specialist in anything. And what ends up happening, it becomes a race to the bottom where someone is charging $5 an hour, so the other VA, just to stand out, will charge $4 an hour, and then the other VA will charge $3.50 an hour. But that's not going to do anything for you, let alone even close to paying for your bills. So in that scenario, for example, you may have to be the VA who specializes in digital marketing, or the VA who specializes in engineering, or in the law industry, or finance industry, or whatever the industry may be. But you have to specialize in a certain way to make yourself stand out. So what I notice over here is that if you don't pick the right skill that's scalable, that you can advance in, that you can continuously improve upon, very shortly your skill is going to become obsolete And that's that. A very recent example is when we, for example, look at ChatGPT that came out right now. A lot of people who had jobs in the writing industry or who were generalists over there found out that they're losing their jobs over there on Upwork, because guess what? Now you have an AI software that can practically do maybe 80% to 90% of what you were charging for, but a software can do that. So if you're not thinking to yourself, and you're not thinking to yourself that whatever skill that I'm going to work on and spend time to develop, if that can become automated in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, if you're not thinking along those lines, what's going to happen is you spend all this time developing a skill, and guess what? You're going to be obsolete in seconds the next time a new software comes out. So you have to be very, very careful of the skill that you pick. And as I mentioned, for most people right now, because they're not mindful of that, that becomes one of the biggest reasons why they fail on Upwork. And I know I said that I'm only going to talk about 10 things, but I'm going to give you one bonus one as well as the 11th reason. And this is probably one of the biggest reasons, and I saved this the best for last too. This is the reason why people fail on Upwork, is that they don't know how to handle setbacks. And this is crucial because everybody thinks they're a champion and they're the king of the world when they have amazing contracts, they have amazing clients, and they have everything going for them. But what happens in a situation where, for example, the client goes to you, you're not good at your job at all, I'm going to cancel this contract. Or for example, the client goes to you, I've given you a certain amount of money, I want a refund for 50% of it, and it's a large sum as well. Or the client goes to you, I question your abilities and your skill set because I don't think you have the skills necessary for this role. How do you react in a situation? What do you do in a situation? I've talked to a lot of freelancers where they've had 1 or 2 negative experiences, and then it's impacted them so much that they stop freelancing on Upwork for maybe 6 months to a year, or they completely give up altogether because they did not know or they did not have the tools to develop themselves so that they could handle a setback or handle a situation where it's not all roses and flowers and everything's okay though. And that's very important because Upwork is a journey. It's kind of like this though. It's going to go up, down, and all over the place though. And there's some days where you're going to be here, some days you're going to be here, some days you're going to be over here as well. And even as I say this, even for myself as an individual who's recording this video and someone who has earned a significant amount on Upwork, at the same time, I've also been victim of that same issue as well. And I had a scenario as well a few years back, actually not a few years ago, maybe about a year back right now, where I had a scenario where the client ended the contract and questioned my abilities, saying that I don't think you had the right skill set for that. And for me, as someone who took a lot of pride in my freelancing skills and the skills that I offer, it really set me back. And for 2-3 months, I did not freelance on the platform because I was in such a slump, just thinking about what happened in that situation and what the client said to me, that it also set me back as well. So when I say this, I'm saying this happens to anyone, right? This doesn't mean just because you've earned a certain amount of money that this will not happen to you or you're a beginner. This could happen to anybody. But at the same time, it's crucial to know because, as I mentioned before as well, if you don't know how to deal with client setbacks or how to deal with setbacks in general when you're freelancing on Upwork, it's going to be a hindrance. And as I mentioned before, most of the individuals on this platform right now don't know how to deal with setbacks, which becomes the 11th reason why people fail on Upwork. I would love to know if there's any other reason why people fail on Upwork that I left on this video. Leave that in the comment section below. Or if you want me to make a video on some other topic on Upwork, leave that in the comment section below and I'll make sure to do that as well.